Damn, Ingenious made the beat. Yo, family, it is your Prince of Positivity, Coach Steve. He is your condor of conspiracy, the dime dropper, Coach Luna. This is the Coach Life Podcast Radio. Welcome to another Coach's Corner. How we doing, Coach Luna?
Doing good, man. Excited.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. As always, our CEO, founder of the Coach Life Podcast brand, the brand about building your brand, Coach Lloyd, Coach Wash. How we doing, boss?
Doing great, man. Blessed and progressing. Yes, sir.
Blessed and progressing. I'm going to steal that one.
Go ahead.
I'm going to steal that one. I appreciate that. Appreciate that. Cool coach's corner that we have today. We have awesome guests that I kind of bring on to the coach's corner. A native from Jacksonville, Florida, moved here around when he was 8 years old. Let's go through a couple of the stats right now. I'm going through all your stuff right now, which is ridiculous, which we actually have to scroll through. Doctor got his doctorate in ethical leadership in 2018. Currently the Valley View Director of Equality and Continuous Improvement, Dr. LeVar J. Ammons. How we doing, sir?
I'm doing very well, my friend, and it's great to be in the virtual space with y'all. And that's LeVar J. Ammons. You don't have to say the doctor and all of that. Like that's for when I'm in other settings. But LeVar is fine. I appreciate y'all and appreciate the platform.
I want to give you your respect, bro. You got your doctorate, bro.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Gratitude.
We'll put that to the side for right now.
Yeah, take that hat off right now. He said,
exactly. Yeah, we're gonna take that hat off for him.
Yeah.
Well, again, we definitely appreciate you joining the Coach's Corner with us today. Got a couple things that we wanted to throw at you before we get into your history. Yep. We want to throw a quick little left at you right now. One of the things that we have started doing is throwing in a quick little blurb about you. We're going to throw 5 questions at you, and you give us your answers on these 5 questions as quickly as you possibly can, sir, with a little bit of detail.
Yeah.
But just to kind of get the people out there to kind of know a little bit more about you and, some of the little quirks about you that people may not know.
Okay.
All right. Let me know when you're ready, sir.
I'm ready to roll.
All right. Awesome. Give us a guilty pleasure, sir. A guilty pleasure for one of your TV shows or movies right now that you secretly are in love with that most people don't know.
Man. Guilty pleasure. I don't get a chance to watch much TV. Well, you know what? I'll say this. The Pat McAfee show, sports talk. Are you familiar with Pat McAfee?
Absolutely.
And the boys, yeah. Kind of changed the game with podcasting and all of that for the sports world. So I probably watch it a little bit more than I should, but they are very talented and entertaining, and he's really showing how you shake and move in the podcast space.
True enough.
Yeah.
True enough. If you could time travel, would you go to the past or would you go to the future? And what era and why would you visit?
I would go to the future. I'll go to the future because I'm curious, just naturally curious. And you could be curious by time traveling in the past, but we have enough documentation, right, to know what has kind of already happened in the past. I'm sure I can go back and find out some new things about what it really was. But seeing the future is something that's intriguing to me.
Absolutely. What's your favorite way to unwind or relax after a busy day?
Oh man, favorite way to unwind and relax after a busy day, hanging with family. My wife and my son. I would say also I'm an artist at my core, at my heart. And I'm always looking to create. So anything artistic that I can be doing. So I'm a, bit of a hack guitarist for the last 20 plus years, lyricist, just anything I can be doing to create. That's when I'm at my happiest.
I'm finna say you got some fingers down there twiddling right
Yeah.
now with Coach Wash.
Okay,
You
then,
said
Coach
some
Watts.
key words right there. Some key
Yeah, yeah.
words.
We'll have to talk.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
right. Yes, we
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
That kind of took away from my other question about that unique skill or talent that most people won't know about you. Let's make a little pivot then, unless there's something that else that you can add with that.
I would say that I recently picked up acting and modeling about a year and a half ago, and I landed my first role in a movie, a student film, and we filmed it back in October. So a new and recent development, but that goes back to me needing to create and art being a thing for me. So yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. You gotta send us that link, man, so we can get this movie out there.
Well, I'm still waiting to see it. It's still in post-production right now. It's supposed to be coming out here in the next couple of weeks. Some real cool students out of the University of Wisconsin, Badger Film. The Badger Film Group is what it is. So it was a pretty cool experience.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Spirit animal. What would be your spirit animal?
I would say a lion would be the spirit animal. There's just this kind of regal, majestic leadership, strength, power, wisdom, piece about a lion and the pride. And it's Africa. So yeah, I'm rocking with the lion.
Awesome. Awesome.
All day.
All day, man. All day. You like I said, you hit some chords with Coach Wash, especially when we started talking about music. So
I love music.
What's your zodiac sign?
Zodiac, I'm a Cancer.
Yeah, Cancer. Man,
I'm a Cancer.
that's a little bit surprising, but man, we got a lot in alignment.
Okay, all right. What about yours, Coach Walsh?
I'm a Libra.
Libra, okay, all right. Well, it's energy and vibrations. That's what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And we ain't gonna get away from the pod, but we
No.
I was gonna say we're gonna have to chop it up right after.
Yeah, no doubt.
Sounds like this is a post-show conversation now. So, Coach, tell us a little bit about your upbringing. Tell us about how you transitioned, how you got into schools, or how you got into school and started the path to education, because your educational background is immense, sir.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, man. And I tell you what, if a lot of the folks who saw me on my journey would see me today, and you would ask them if, back then they would see me as Dr. LeVar J. Ammons and have this intense and expansive educational journey I've been on. They would have laughed, to be real about it. Again, Jacksonville, Florida is where I was born. My family, all of my family is pretty much there. My aunts, uncles, cousins. In my immediate family, it's my mother, me, and my younger brother. I do have some other siblings from my father's previous relationships. But we're still all family. It's all family and all love. And it's been that way the entire time. So super close-knit family, even as we, moved away. But just kind of coming up, leaving Florida, we landed on the south side of Chicago. Well, even before the south side, we landed with some family members because we were displaced. So needing to stay with some family until we got on our feet. Finally got on our feet, lived on the south side of Chicago for a little while, 49th and Laughlin, off of Ashland, back of the yards, out there, right? So had some early lessons in that space. My mother always worked pretty hard to push us further and further into better opportunities out into the suburbs. My father himself was, he was a street guy. and was really the reason why we had to end up moving to Chicago in the first place to connect with some family. So from the south side of Chicago to Bellwood, and then eventually out to Darien, which is one of the whitest places in America. But a lot of lessons to be learned in those spaces and navigating spaces where I wasn't a part of the dominant culture. So as I'm moving as I was and being a pretty transient student, education wasn't always at the forefront because we had other things to be concerned about and to be thinking about and worrying about, right? So from there, again, education, it was valued by my family. But in terms of what was going on in life, mom having to work, being a latchkey kid in the 80s and the 90s, you're just trying to pretty much figure it out right on your own. So, and then my folks didn't go to college, right? My mom, she, finished high school, went to Job Corps. My father, he finished high school and went off to do work and all of that. But I didn't know how to be a student in my pre-K through 12 experience because, again, there were a lot of just life circumstances I was working through and just figuring it out. So I was a halfway decent athlete in high school. All area, all conference, all of those things. Folks knew that I was getting ready to go and play some, Division I football and all of that. And I felt that, in my heart and soul and in my body. But then there's the ACT, right? And if you hadn't been on your P's and Q's academically, there was no way you're going to be ready for that. And that was the case for me. So, I remember just this embarrassment that I had in my senior year with my, 1.8 GPA that I had during that time. And as I look back at that, none of the adults that I was in community with in those schools or in those institutions really reached out to me. You know what I'm saying? And said, hey, man, you got something going on here. We want to pull you in and give you the game, if you will, and we're going to set you up, and this is what you got to have, and you got to do this. I was like I said, halfway decent athlete, not a trouble kid or anything like that, especially coming from the South. It was yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, yes, sir, no, sir.
Right.
Folks, they didn't play that, going to school and embarrassing them and all of that. So I was pretty much in line, but just my academic motivation and understanding was poor, right? But the heartbreaking thing was that, nobody came to my aid in those institutions. It was all fine and well when I'm dunking basketballs and running touchdowns and all of that. But when it was time to talk about academics and preparing me for the next steps, it didn't happen. So shortly after that, when I realized I wasn't going to play, at a Michigan or a U of I or University of Miami or wherever the case may be, I went to the military just out of wanting to do something or getting away, in particular from my mother, who was just really just raining down on me because she didn't play any games about, sitting around and just not doing nothing, right? So did that, served and was happy to serve, but I also realized I wasn't a soldier either, a career soldier. So came back, went through the whole community college piece, transferred, played some ball at Quincy University, had a fantastic time there, came home, had to reinvent myself. And then once I did that, it was going back to school to get my master's to become a counselor, right? So I was a high school counselor for about 8 years. And what really drew me to doing that work was the experience that I had in high school, right? So like being able to then recognize students that were in a similar situation that I was in and being able to give them the game, right? So they don't have to suffer in the ways that I did, while also still servicing, all of the students, but in particular those that I could see myself in terms of what their life challenges were and trying to get to the next level. So that's where kind of the education kick started for me, and went back, got my doctorate and another master's for leadership and all of that, and it kind of pushed me to where I am now. And the crazy part about it is that when I look back on that time period, I was so driven and so hell bent on trying to prove everybody wrong, right? Because I was really fulfilling the stereotypical, high school jock stereotype of, being able to do all of these things on the field of play, but not having it right up here,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that just crushed me more than anything, to know that people had that perception of me. And I just went on a tear, man. I got a doctorate and 2 masters in 10 years. And it was not without struggle and sacrifice on the behalf of my family and my son and just kind of everybody around me. But we got it done. So now we're here, and now it's time to get to the next level of impact.
I love that. First off, there's a lot of meat there. There's a whole lot of meat there. And one of the things that that I love about the conversations for Coaches Corners that we have is that we talk about people that come from the same similar struggles. It's funny because you said, again, being that kid that you didn't feel get that got poured into enough.
Yeah.
How many of these times, Coach Luna, have we had this same conversation where we talked about those kids that haven't been poured into enough, that need that little bit more, that little bit of motivation, that need that little bit of life, that little bit of care from somebody?
Plenty,
I mean,
plenty of conversations. You know, the part that got me the most is what you said about that 1.8 GPA, because my first semester at Texas State, I had a 1.75 GPA. I was, let's just say I was enjoying college too much.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've talked about it on the podcast before. That was one of those, like, the shock collar moments for me, because my mom was paying for my school at this time. And I had been doing such a good job of being on autopilot, just making sure I'm handling my grades and everything's taken care of, that at this point, I was like, man, hold on, man. If she know that I just literally I'm about to fail out of Texas State on her dime,
Yeah.
I'm never gonna hear the end of this. Like this
Ever.
just can't be. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah, absolutely.
I had to sit back and I had to just reflect, like, man, I got to get back. I got to get this back right. And then similar to how you said, like my last semester, I ended up on the dean's list, and then you know, God blessed me with the opportunity to get my master's, and then I ended up getting mine too. So I'm gravitating towards your story. And the part that's really getting me is like when you said reinvent yourself.
Yeah.
How does that look? Like, what does that really mean when you say that? Like, what is that?
mm-hmm.
How do you do it? What do you do? How do you reinvent yourself?
Yeah, man. And thank you for sharing your story, Coach Luna. I appreciate that, man, because oftentimes, especially as men, sometimes we suffer in silence and suffer alone, right? And we don't think that you know, we carry the weight of the responsibility of being men on our shoulders, and it's heavy. And if you're not you know, in this skin or within this gender, right? You really can't feel that. People can't understand it. But in terms of reinventing myself, my identity was so attached to that of the athlete, right? I remember being, you know, 6 years old, and my father hanging out with his homeboys and calling me in there with them, and they having a few and they talking trash. And then, you know, they'll pull up my short leg and look at his legs. Look at his legs. This boy gonna be an athlete, right? So that was poured into me so early and so attached. My identity was so attached to my physical prowess and what I could do with a football and with a basketball, that you know, once I knew I wasn't going on to college from high school, my identity was still kind of locked in that athletic mode, which pushed me even more to get to the next level, to play some ball, to try to make my NFL aspirations come true. But then once the NFL dream chasing was done, then it's like, okay, well, here you are in the real world. My wife and I had just kind of moved in together. And I needed to figure out life and how I was going to move on from being this athlete to now somebody in society, a Black man in society who's just trying to make a way and be productive and have a quality life. So to your point, Coach Luna, a lot of reflection, right? Just kind of sitting down, looking in the mirror, having some of those tough conversations with yourself, some real conversations with yourself about who you are, why are you even here, what are you going to do, all the responsibilities that you have. And, you know, I certainly had to kind of go through that process of just figuring that out for myself. So I'd worked a number of odd and end jobs, you know, and I found out a lot about who I'm not. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't just this one moment where it just clicked for me. But it was a process of a painful process of trial and error and trying this and trying that and just talking to people, staying connected and network with people. I'm definitely a networker and a shaker and a mover, but leaning on people. I don't want to be the smartest person in the room. So always connecting with folks who have some wisdom, knowledge, insight, somebody that might can point me in the right direction. And I certainly found some of those people that helped me along the way on that journey of just kind of reinventing myself and finding out who I am. And that journey in many ways is still like I'm still searching and looking and growing every day. But the difference is now like I know who I am. I know why I'm here and what I'm going to do. But at that time, early to mid 20s, when your identity is wrapped up in one thing and now it stops. You know what I'm saying? It was a lot of soul searching and probably took me about 3 or so years to really kind of like, find out what it is I was getting ready to do with life.
You know what, Coach? One of the things you said earlier was, and you mentioned embarrassment. And I kind of want to go back to that partly because it sounds like that was some of the gas that was like the motivation. That was the gas to get your car moving, right?
Oh yeah.
We all know as mentors, as coaches, as leaders, motivation does not last. So what was it outside of embarrassment that helped carry you through to make sure that you made the changes that needed to be made so that you can move the way you needed to move?
Discipline. Motivation is fleeting, right? Like we could be motivated and motivation comes in moments of inspiration, right? And we know inspiration is fleeting as well. Like we can't grab it and just be inspired all the time. So we can't be motivated all the time, but what we can do is be disciplined. My one of my monikers is discipline over motivation, right? Being able to get up every day, be consistent, embracing life and embracing what sucks about life and being able to just, one of my taglines is just stay in the fight. You just got to stay in the fight, no matter, what's going on. The great pugilistic philosopher Iron Mike Tyson said once, everybody has a plan, right? until you get hit in the face. And once you get hit in the face now and you've been jarred now, what are you going to do to now respond, right, to what's happened to you in life? So it takes some discipline and some courage and strength just to kind of keep going. But discipline is the number one thing, and being able to manage yourself because we as individuals, we're the hardest person you'll ever have to manage is yourself. So discipline is everything.
Could not agree more. Could not agree more. So let's circle back to, again, going into the military. We get into the military. We serve. Again, thank you for your service, sir. We get out of the military. The transition, I've heard from a lot of members of the military, is sometimes it's hard to make that transition coming home. Was it an easy transition for you, or was it a pretty rough transition for you once you got out?
Yeah, it was an easy transition for me to come on home from the military. Like I said, I served. I was a good soldier, I believe. I was a leader, platoon leader, squad leader, all of that in the military. I was a reservist, right? So I did my basic training at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. I did my AIT, which is your advanced individual training at Fort Jackson, South Carolina as well. 73 Charlie finance specialist. And, I was happy to serve. I was willing to go off and fight and do all of the things. But there were a few moments in the military where I realized that it just wasn't quite the life for me, right? Especially around the idea of just being expendable and replaceable. And that's where the highest level of respect for me comes for the military, because you have people out there who are willing to pay the ultimate price for the freedoms that we have here, right? So I did my time with that. If I was called to go fight, I would have gone to do it for sure. But I knew that I had some more to contribute to society, beyond being a soldier, which is a high honor, right? Don't get it twisted. Like I do have a respect and reverence for the American soldier for sure, but it just wasn't. There was more for me to do. I felt right. So when it was time for me at the end of my 6-year contract to either re-enlist or respectfully decline, I decided to respectfully decline and get out in society and shake and move and try to make the biggest impact in that way. So the transition wasn't hard for me. I didn't see any action or combat, and I'm thankful for that, because I know that there are consequences that come along with that, even if you come back home and try to get back or acclimate it back to life. I had my grandfather served in the Navy. He was there when Pearl Harbor happened. I have an uncle who served in Vietnam, earned the Purple Heart in the Battle of Ripcord, but we had many losses. So again, that respect and reverence is there. And I was fortunate to not see any battle or any wartime. But me transitioning back home, it was just, I had my mindset on making the best life I possibly could have in this country, and doing whatever I could to impact society before my time is up. So that transition for me, I was excited when I finally got home and was able to get to work on that.
That's because you had a higher purpose. That's because you had a higher purpose.
I believe that. And I'm still working towards it every day.
Awesome. So go ahead, Coach Luna.
I got a question. I'm very, because I'm intrigued. Based off the background and everything, like, how did you know, like, whatever because I don't remember you mentioning, I may have missed it, mentioning exactly what you studied in through your undergrad.
Yeah.
Now, I remember you talked about counseling for your master's program, correct?
Yeah.
How did your bachelor's correlate with your master's, or did you like, here was my bachelor's, this isn't really what I wanted to do, I'm gonna go back into school, get my master's in this, because like what was that trigger? What was that burning sensation within yourself to say, that's the route I need to go? Like, what did you hear? What did you feel? What was it that said that way?
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. So undergraduate was a criminal justice major. I chose criminal justice, number one, and to be real, it was one of the easier majors. It aligned with my military experience. And again, I was pretty hell bent on making it to the NFL. So I figured I would just, have this, I would chase this degree and I would get this degree, and I would go all out on the football field in college, which I did. I had a fantastic career, rewrote all the record books. They still stand. 20 years later, 20 plus years later, my records are still intact there. And I'm hoping that somebody breaks them one day. But I realized I wasn't a police officer when, I'm hanging out. And again, I'm of the people, right? So I'm hanging out with some of the people in the town, and, we get into things and all of this. And there was this gas station. I went to Quincy University. It's kind of southwest of here, about 45 minutes away from Western Illinois, small liberal arts college. And I'm doing my internship at the Adams County Police Department. And I'm in there, and I'm, my job as an intern was to like in process the people who get arrested on Saturday night, right? They have a little bit too much to drink, they get in a fight or whatever, or things go down. They come in, I'm taking mug shots and fingerprinting and, doing the whole thing. And then you have to go on these ride-alongs. So here I am on this ride-along in the squad car, and we pull up to the gas station where everybody hangs out. And all of my homeboys and everybody was there, and it's like, oh man, this guy's the police,
right?
So I realized at that moment, like, no, I'm not a police officer. And again, I respect the work. I got close friends who are police officers, man, family members. Shout out to got some folks over in the DuPage County Police Department, the Villa Park Police Department, the Chicago Police Department. I got buddies and friends, but it just wasn't my work, right? So after I come home, I have this bachelor's degree. Out of like wanting to or needing to get the finances going, I had applied to a few police departments to take the test and all of that, but my heart really wasn't in it, right? So then that's where the whole mentor piece came. So I had a basketball coach in high school by the name of Walter Downing, who is still like, in my life to this day, who when I was in high school, he was working security at the school, coaching basketball and working on his master's at that time, right, to teach English. And he was the one who was kind of pouring into me after I came back from college with this criminal justice degree, telling me like, hey, man, you'd be a great fit in education. I don't know if you thought about it very much, but just consider it. He starts running down all of the things. My wife of 13 years as an educator, she's in her 20th year already as an educator. So just talking to her, seeing the rhythm of a school year, what it looks like. I have several friends who are in the field of education as well. So just kind of listening to them as I was, again, to your point, Coach Luna, figuring out myself and redefining myself. I had all these people kind of pouring into me and saying, hey, you'd be a good fit in education. So that's when I decided to go back and, get an education degree. I thought I wanted to teach history, but I turned out becoming a high school counselor. So, and that was really kind of the path of least resistance from the logistics of it. I would have had to be in school a lot longer to be a classroom teacher, because I would have had to go back for another 4 years or get all the credits in order to be a classroom teacher. Whereas a counselor, you could just come in, have a bachelor's degree, and then you could do a master's program and get your type 73, which is for counseling. So that was kind of the transition. And then the more I thought about counseling, it was like, oh, this would be perfect because I get a chance to, I'm not going to be in the classroom, but I'll be able to impact, my caseload and do programming and all of those things. So I was able to do that. So that's what kind of spurred the transition, because criminal justice just wasn't it. Had friends that poured into me about education, and I just had to kind of find where I fit in the field of education.
Awesome. This is what led to now making the transition to get your doctorate in education, in educational ethical leadership, right?
Yeah.
So so can you explain that particular degree? What is the foundation behind that particular
Yeah.
degree?
Yeah, so I was in my third year, my second year as a counselor, and I'd always known like, okay, well, education is going to be it. This is my lane. I want to go back one day and get my doctorate. Maybe I'll do this counseling thing for 10 years or whatever, get the experience and learn the ropes, and I'll go back, get my doctorate, and then I'll figure out things from there. I had a division head of our counseling department I had an amazing counseling department. First of all, like people would, anytime we went anywhere, we did work anywhere, other counselors would be like, you got a special group. Like, it's not like this everywhere else. It was an incredibly diverse group, just super cool group. But our division head at the time, she was a go-getter. She is a go-getter. And in my second year, she's like, I heard you talking about your doctorate, and I'm getting ready to do this program over at Olivet Nazarene. Would you want to do it? And really, she was not wanting to do it on her own, right? So she was trying to go around and enlist as many people as she could to try to go do this program. And I was the only one crazy enough to take her up on it. So she and I went in and did this program over at Olivet Nazarene around ethical leadership. So my strategy was, I didn't want to be pigeonholed in education, right? I'm a very much so a differentiated person. I like to do a lot of different things. Sometimes I can't get out of my own way because I'm trying to do so much. And I said, well, I don't know if I want to be tethered to education this way for the rest of my life, right? So we went into this, it's like a non-traditional doctoral program, an accelerated program, which was crazy in and of itself, because your traditional doctoral programs, it's over 7 years, right? You'll do 4 years of coursework. They give you 3 years to write your dissertation and do your study and your research, and you're out the door, right? But in this program, it was a 3-year accelerated program. So you're doing the coursework and you're writing the dissertation at the same time, which was just, it got done, but it was some suffering going on. It was some tears and some blood and some sweat, like for real, going through that. So with this degree, it's a ethical leadership degree. It's not exclusive to education. So I loved it because there was this very diverse collection of classmates in this cohort, right? So these folks weren't exclusive to education. There was one of my classmates was a mental health clinician for the Bears. There was a Pfizer Pharmaceuticals rep in there. The Chicago Police Department had a sergeant that was in there. You had educators in there. Just a just dope collection of people. So in that program,
I would
because
assume you have HR people as well.
yeah, there might have been some HR people in there as well, and there were multiple cohorts that were going on at the same time. So there could have been many other folks, right? So it was just one of these. Again, we're talking about ethical leadership, and it's really about leadership with the lens of ethics and doing the right thing, right? Because there's corruption all over the place. You're talking about Enron and all of these. Like, we can see corruption in systems all over, right? So just the idea of doing the right thing as servant leaders, right? Once you get to a level of status and power where you are a decision maker, like, where does your moral compass lie, right? And doing the right thing by people that you're leading. So my dissertation, because I was doing equity work at my school district at that time, my dissertation was about ethnic racial socialization and the intersection between Black identity, perceptions of discrimination, and academic outcomes. Because I'm thinking about this achievement gap that has been around, forever, right? And what does race have to do with this achievement gap and the relationships and the dynamics around race, right? Exactly. What's going on there? Because we've had many conversations about education and Black American education. And there's been so many programs, Race to the Top, No Child Left Behind, Every Student Succeeds Act, like all these federal programs, but the gap is still there, right? And it's widening, right? So I really wanted to understand, like, again, how are we socialized in this skin to navigate America? And then how does that impact our perceptions of discrimination? And when we do encounter it, what does that mean for the academic process and academic outcomes? So it was it was an interesting study. And that was kind of at the foundation of my study. And everybody did different things as it related to, leadership and ethical leadership. But that was just kind of my lane, being that I was an educator. So that work has really been the foundation of what I do now as an equity director. And I didn't even know at that time, because the equity director position, it didn't exist in education at that time. There were maybe one or two in the 2010 to 2015, 2017 that I knew of. But the interesting thing was post-COVID, post-George Floyd, post-Breonna Taylor and all of that, these positions started to pop up all over the place, right, in education. So yeah, that's kind of what that program was, and how I put my lens on what it meant to be an ethical leader in education. Because again, going back to my experience of not having anyone tap into me or pour into me, right? And I was definitely in the midst of that academic achievement gap, but also understanding that it wasn't for a lack of intelligence, right? It was just about the relationships that I had with the educators and how they felt about me and pulling me along.
Or lack thereof.
Or lack thereof, right?
I'm about to pull a Coach Steve.
Do
There's
it.
a lot of meat in there for us. But no, I can't let you off the hook. Like Coach Steve was saying, I can't let you off the hook. You got to give us more details about your dissertation and the results behind it. The aha behind behind everything that you went ahead and studied.
Yeah. No, I think as the old adage goes, what is understood need not be explained. I think for the Black American people, there is an understanding that we have had to navigate a system of racism at every level, right? Whether it be explicit or implicit. And the thing about racism today is that it is much more covert, right?
Hmm.
We don't have an apartheid state on the books where it's, government sanctioned, legalized racism, separate but equal, segregation and all of that anymore. But we are still living in the echoes of that, right? Even though we've done the work um, legislatively and policy wise to eradicate that, we still haven't delved into the conversations about the mindsets, the behaviors, the belief systems, the ways of being, right? Of people and how we relate to one another or we don't relate to one another. Because I believe all of you know that Chicago is one of the more segregated cities, in the country, right? So we're still living with these behaviors, these behaviors, belief system, and these ways of being around racial interaction and race relations. So I say all of that to say that what I found in my study, it wasn't surprising. Um, uh, I had what was it? I had a significant correlation between students that experienced or perceived discrimination. They disengaged from the academic process, right? So even if they thought they were being slighted because of their skin color or because they were of a certain race, they didn't engage in the academic process, right? And that just ultimately goes to like relationships precede learning. So if even irrespective of racism, if there's not a good relationship there with student and educator, students not going to engage because the student can tell, like the students know when you don't care about them, right? So students are there to be led, be poured into, to be guided on this process because we as the adults, we've been through it already, right? And we have to be able to provide students with what they need to have success. So yeah, that was the main thing that I found out was that if students perceived discrimination, they were less likely to engage in the academic process, which is, I mean, it makes perfect sense. But me saying that independent of a study that was conducted, it can be dismissed, right? By people and by saying, oh, it's not like that anymore, or whatever the case may be. No, here's what students are saying about their experiences with perceived discrimination, and here's what they are saying about their willingness to engage in the process. So that was the biggest thing, and it really goes back to the need for us to be culturally responsive, and that's been a huge talking point and emphasis in the field of education, especially in Illinois, and it's supported by the state board of education, and school districts are beginning to kind of soften the soil, if you will, around being able to normalize these conversations about racial dynamics and the impact it has on teaching and learning.
So man, it's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You unloading the whole clip.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So this is what I have. I'm always in the coach life, coach's corner. We always like to share our experiences, right? So I completely identify with this need to detach with experience of any type of discrimination or exposure. Just thinking about to your childhood, even in adulthood, it's a constant battle. So, like even with your studies in ethics, there's always the political game in every area of life, profession, education, whatever profession you're in. There's always the politics. As a counselor, and even in the role you're in now, how do you advise people to stay in the fight? Because we are actually privileged today, if we really think about it. It's funny.
Yeah.
It's funny because you say you would travel into the future. Part of me agree with that, but part of me is like want to travel into the past just to humble myself. Because the reality is people that look like us, they had to stay in the fight when the fight was much more real. You know what I'm saying? Like discrimination then versus now. Like your little bit of taste that's deterring you from moving forward ain't nowhere near what it used to be. You actually have more opportunity, even though that discrimination and racism is still there. we still have more opportunity and a better chance of actually progressing with the right credentials. And, you know, the education that you have, even in the road that you're in today, it wouldn't have been as, even though it wasn't smooth. I already know. I know it wasn't
Yep.
smooth, but it wouldn't have been the same path, you know, 4 or 5 plus decades ago, you know. So
Yeah.
how would you encourage like a kid to stay in the fight, or even if you're mentoring another adult, how do you stay in the fight and bypass all the politics, knowing dang well that you're ethically and morally in place? This is your role to actually enforce ethics
Yeah.
and morals,
Yeah.
but it's being
Yeah.
fought against you by the system itself,
Well,
the system that
that's
taught you and gave you the credentials.
yeah. That's a great question and observation, and quite the quandary to be in, right? Um, Racism 50 years ago is different than racism today. Like I said, it's more covert. It's still just as nasty as as it was then. It's just in a different way. Uh, Case an example, right? In 2018, JP Morgan Chase, right, the bank,
Yeah.
settled a discrimination lawsuit to the tune of like 90 something odd $1 million, right? Back in 2018, because they were offering higher interest rates to people of color who had similar credit profiles to their white counterparts, right? So we're talking about like a systemic issue. And now we're talking about automation and like who's feeding the computers and all of that. Because I don't think it's one evil person at JP Morgan Chase who is like, you know, pushing the deny button, right? But we have this ethos, these beliefs, behaviors, and ways of being that now are going into technology, right? So with the systems in place and the policies and all of that, like we're still in that fight, but it's not directly in our face, right? And if you are not in tune, or if you're not educated or in the know about these things, you can just kind of go about your life and still, you know, fall victim to it. And again, our white brothers and sisters in this work who can see that we've made these changes from, you know, 50 years ago to where we are now, thinking that it's all good, but yet you have this one instance like a JP Chase Morgan, right, where no one is necessarily you know, being kind of this visible interpersonal racist, but again, it's ingrained in our systems. So for me, in navigating the work that I do, and like you said, trying to impact people's ethics and moral sensibilities around this work, I understand that we've been socially conditioned not to have these types of conversations, right? And the idea is to pull people into the conversation with some love, care, and compassion, because this is a system that we've inherited. Like we don't have, you know, it's no one's fault today as to why things are the way they are. But it is our responsibility and our moral obligation to help make them better than what they are now, right? Because we've always progressed, and you're always going to predictably run into resistance, whether it's active resistance, passive resistance, and of course, like perceptions of discrimination or even just actualized discrimination has incredible implications on, you know, people of color, from just an emotional well-being standpoint, psychological distress, which can lead into like physical ailments and all of that, right? So one is understand what you are navigating, right? And know that these behaviors that you're getting ready to encounter as a person of color, Black person, what have you, in a predominantly white society, like these things are going to predictably happen, right? You have to understand that and be ready to confront and navigate it with a high level of like um, emotional regulation, right? Because there's this, again, when I run into these things in my work or in everyday life, I know that this is just a system that has informed us how to interpersonally interact, right? So I can offer some grace and compassion for someone who may say something off color. And I'm also going to engage, right, and ask some questions as to what do you mean by that? Tell me a little bit more about that, right? To get people to hear themselves talk and all of that. So that's been my approach to the work. I think for the younger people, if I'm going to be mentoring someone and staying in the fight around this work in particular, we're standing on the shoulders of giants, whether we're talking about Martin, Malcolm, Shirley Chisholm, the list goes on and on, right? Of people who sacrificed to push us to where we are now. And Coach Wash, you mentioned that by today's standards, we are pretty much privileged in comparison to what was going on 40, 50 years ago. But we have to realize, like, again, who we are, what we're up against. And I think Black people, and I don't want to speak for all Black people, but from my observation, there's been, we suffer from a lack of information and not knowing, not being in the know around a number of things, right? Whether it's financial literacy, whether it's how do you navigate the pre-K through 12 education system in America, whether it's, what does the American job opportunity structure look like and how do you break into those spaces, right? It's just a lack of information that we haven't been able to tap into. But by today's standards, we have the internet and we're in the age of information. So you can go and get the information, but are you in the circles of knowing what questions to ask?
Exactly. And it's by design. It's by design.
It's 100% by design.
We're not in the know
100%
by design. And if you don't think to ask these questions or you're not exposed to Black elitists, we would be considered Black elitists just based on our educational background and our, where we stand professionally and, where we're at in society today. We'd be considered Black elitists. But if you're not exposed to that group, and the previous pod we just had, we actually kind of touched on this. It's just a lot of ignorance. A lot of people, as Coach Sid said, as a previous guest, a lot of people don't leave a 5-mile radius.
Yeah.
And if you don't leave that radius and you're surrounded by everybody with the same mindset and you never get an opportunity to be exposed, then you don't know to look otherwise. And unfortunately, technology is a gift and a curse, and it's more of a curse because I would say it's more detrimental than beneficial. Because I know at least when I was forced to go to the library as a child, wasn't no bullshit in the book. There may have been.
Well, it was some bullshit.
Yeah. That you get what I'm saying.
Right.
It's not the same as I roll over to, TikTok, Instagram. There's something flashing, dances, and
yeah.
Even if it's misinformation, that's in a book, at least it had to go through some approval of some sorts. And then you have several other books to kind of cross-reference. Now, I'm not even presented with the opportunity to look at anything that's worth my time or meaningful. Everything that's thrown in my face, if I don't know what questions to ask, like you said, everything that's presented to me, it's a new dance. It's a BS song that don't teach you nothing. There's no guidance being fed to us. We're being fed with everything to deter us from knowledge or wisdom.
Yeah, and that's why the educational system has to change. Coach Luna, you had something.
Oh yeah, no, you're 100% correct there. I say that all the time while I'm on here. But Coded Bias should still be on Netflix. I encourage everyone in this pod, if you haven't watched it yet, I encourage everyone that listens to it. Coded Bias. It talks about the new age of AI and the algorithms, how they already have racial bias.
Mm-hmm.
So that goes back into what you're saying, Coach Wash. So these suckers then got so smart and so rooted into everything. They're pushing AI, and AI, dog, I'll just give you one snippet of it. They went ahead and they ran like just random numbers of just random minorities and all this other stuff. And the minorities, they also included people that were senators, people of public servants, you know what I'm saying? And automatically the service that they were running through the AI automatically coded them as people that were potential criminals and things like this. Clean record and everything, just based off the metrics that whatever the AI system had going on was already racial profiling them. So the thing that I'm trying to get to with this is the algorithms. You know how you all, every morning when I'm sending y'all, reel after reel after reel, I always think about how the algorithms are set up. So the way algorithms are set up, your most recent search history, dog, it ain't got so good with technology that when you're scrolling and you stop, the amount of time that you spend on a certain ad or a product or anything like that, the next time you get back on this app, it's going to show you that exact same app. I had a homeboy that I worked with, Coach Davis, Coach Y. When we worked with him this was 2019. He was telling me a conversation that he was having with a parent, and it was something along the lines of basically like, there was some shorts that he was thinking about. It was a conversation that he was having about one of the kids or whatever, and it was a product. It was just a product. He never Googled it, nothing. Next time he opened his phone, bang. So it's just what you said, Coach Wash. It's gotten so much to the point that if you're not purposely searching for whatever that it is that you may be seeking for, if it's something good, you're not going to get it. Because your phone is so bogged down with so many cookies and so many just root keywords that it just says, no, I'm not letting you go that way. You stuck here in this lane, buddy.
So you only going to see what you want to see.
And the education system, like, it has to change. It has to change. We have an educational system that was not designed for students of color, and that's just the reality of it. Formalized education going back to 1750, Benjamin Franklin, the Franklin Academy, right? Benjamin Franklin, Noah Webster, who kind of set the context for, hey, we speak English here, the Webster's Dictionary, Thomas Jefferson, Horace Mann, John Dewey. You got about 170-year history there of formalized education that did not consider or even allow people of color to be in those same institutions, right? So now here we are. 1954 was Brown versus the Board of Education, and now it's been deemed, appropriate to have students of color intermingled, right, with white students. We're only 70 years outside of that, right? But yet we have this 300-year history of exclusion in our system. So we're still, the idea that we are free, in a sense, right? Black Americans and people of color in this country is still a relatively new concept.
New concept. I would say, and I have a master's in education too. Focus in adult learning. So I remember when I was doing my studies and I'm looking at everything and I'm just like, you know what, man? As simple as Bloom's taxonomy, I was like, the education system is designed to keep you pretty much on the first two levels, second level at best. They're not going to teach you no understanding. It only teaches you memorization. So they don't want you to understand nothing because that's too close to being able to get close to the synthesis.
Self-efficient.
Right.
Yeah, they don't want you to critically think, and we came back to the history of education is really designed to pump out certain type of workers.
Well, what was the educational system was?
Because want to know where I'm finna go. I'm finna talk about capitalism. That's the name of the game. That's it. It's all to feed into capitalism. Because if I gave everybody the opportunity to think freely and critically think, you would have no workers. The only way to operate it in that way with this many people would be straight trading and bartering. You have to go back to a trade and barter system. Everybody would just use the skills and the knowledge they have to exchange
goods and services.
Exactly. You can't have big business when you got a lot of people on a higher level of thinking.
Right. Because you need your bean counters.
Exactly. So at the end of the day, I don't want to say there's no solution, but we are in the prequel of the Matrix, which is Terminator. And them algorithms is what adds up to robots that start to read you and read better than you.
Yeah, well, we got the Chat GPT. That's a thing now.
That's a very hot topic.
Man, all the time we put into putting together 20+ page papers in college or
Yeah.
50
Get it
plus,
done in
whatever,
10
whatever
seconds.
level you was at, they doing it in seconds because they've
Yes.
collected all this data that Coach Luna just spoke on.
Yep.
And now they can spit it out. They didn't search the whole world of the internet in seconds.
Yeah. Yeah. And pull it out for you, you know, and school districts are working feverishly to figure out how to not only get ahead of AI, but how do we also use it? Because there's no stopping it. Like this, the genie's out the bottle, if
Yeah.
you
Right.
will. So we better damn well be ready to partner with it and use it as a tool, right? Rather than trying to uh, say that students can't use it, because I mean, students cheating in school, I mean, it goes back to probably the first school that that there ever was, right? Like students are going to try to find a way. So this makes it incredibly easy, and I think and I'm not sure about this, but I think there's other softwares that you can run papers through to see if they've been plagiarized, and I imagine something is being developed in that way for AI, but I would say let's use it as a tool rather than trying to exclude it, because you're gonna it won't be good for the system.
There's really nothing you can do at this point. So it's a way of trying to get around of weaponizing of it. Now you
Yeah.
have to find a way to use it for good, but now you have to go back to how do we? I'm gonna go back to our previous pods. We're gonna full circle this. So since we've had to deal with lazy ass parents and us as coaches and educators, how do we handle the hot potato ass parent? The one who is not monitored their child, made sure they on top of their P's and Q's, and obviously the one supposedly on top of their P's and Q's now can use the technology. How do we get them to understand the benefits of, I'll just say, critical thinking at this point, because essentially everything that's available takes that away completely.
True.
Then
Yeah.
why is it important to critically think even today when it appears that the answers for everything are at my fingertips? Why is it important to still critically think?
It's important to critically think so we don't fall into the status quo, right? If you're not critically thinking, you're just going to go along and get along, right? As far as the hot potato parent who may not have their thing together and may not be doing that thing with the student, I'll always go back to relationships precede learning, right? These hot potato parents have an experience, right, with education. They may have not had the best educational experience growing up, and there's a lack of trust. And in terms of, they want their students, like all parents want their students to do well academically and have access to opportunity, but it's the information as to how to actually do that. And if educational institutions can't truly be a community with parents, then it's going to be difficult, because if I'm a parent who was born, or went to school in the 70s or the 60s, or even during our time, those educational gaps were still there. The discipline disparities were still there. We know it's a national phenomenon that our Black and brown students get disciplined at 2 times, sometimes 3 times the rate of their white counterparts. So there are some experiences there. That's not anything new. That's been going on for decades. We can't forget that going back to 1954 with Brown versus the Board of Education, when Black students were now able to go to white schools, that came along with a police presence, a police escort, a military escort, right, ordered by the president, right? So it's just like, what are the relationships and the lack of relationships due to the color barrier, race relations, right? What has that done to the relationships and the trust in our institutions? Because truth be told, you have, parents of color who are trying to navigate the system, but can't connect with, the educators in our country, which are predominantly white, right? I mean, even in my own school district, we are the most culturally and racially diverse school district in the state, but yet and still, most of our administrators, most of our teachers are white, which is all fine and well, right? Because we want to work like hell to try to bring in more representation, but we're not going to flip that in our lifetime, right?
Right.
So then how do we educate the folks that we do have, right, and activate their moral compass around the work that needs to be done for students of color so we can narrow these gaps in achievement? But to do that, you have to be not only connected with the student, but you have to be connected with the parents as well. So these hot potato parents, have they truly been connected to the school in a meaningful way? Are they a part of the academic process? Are they aware of the resources? Are the relationships quality, right? Those are just some of the questions. So it's hard for me to lay some of the challenges of students at the feet of parents solely. I'm not saying that parents don't have a responsibility or they're not accountable for having their children show up in better ways. But I am saying that our systems are responsible for making that happen, right? And we have to be responsive and caring for the folks, because we're servants, right? We're public servants, so we have to be responsive and caring to the people that are coming in. So I really can't answer that question, Coach Wash, because it is complex and multi-layered. But from the perspective of a district level administrator, I see this work at a systems level, and my job as an equity director is to redesign the system, because you mentioned, Coach Wash, that all of this is by design, right? Even the way parents are these hot potato parents, like that's all by design. So as educators and people who are sitting in the seats, like it's our responsibility to redesign the system with some intentionality to best support students, best support parents, and provide them with education as well as to how you go about this pre-K through 12 process.
Yeah, I think what I'm, after you speak on this and thinking about it more, I'm thinking more about the matrix. Pretty much, you can't really redesign the system. It's almost like we have to plant agents within the system secretly and operate covert the opposite direction. So covert racism.
Yeah.
I'm talking about covert redesign. So really, I think with that, it's operating not within the system, but more so. I talked about this with me and Luna talked about this all the time. I talked about how even when I was in the classroom, we stray away from the the curriculum. I taught business when I was in high school. I taught business, entrepreneurship, and personal finance. And a lot of that's personal experience, because the textbook ain't finna give you nothing but some foundational system jargon. It's not gonna get you game for real. But talking behind the scenes, I actually did a lot more for my students than what anything in the textbook could ever did. And I feel like with what we're talking about now, we pretty much have to be Neo. We have to be Morpheus. We got to be all of them, pretty much navigating our ways underground. And then we got our village of people that's operating to wake more people up.
So for those of y'all who have not watched Matrix, you might be like, man, who is Neo? Who is all of this?
Right.
So I'm gonna go ahead and ask the question in a very easier way to understand, because I know if I'm itching to hear it, I know anybody that can at least understand or articulate anything of what's going on wants to hear it as well. What does the K through 12 pilot program look like within the system of how it should be? Don't give us exactly what you do. Are we still going to be learning, infinity and the cosine, cos, tan, all this other stuff that we know when they told us in high school and they told us this in grade school, like, man, one day you're going to be able to use it. Man, I still have not used that. I still have not been able to walk outside and be like, that's a metamorphosis rock. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right. Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
sun, the moon is at a waxing crescent today. Like the
Right.
information is just not, a lot of that stuff just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But I'm asking, like, what does that look like? Obviously, don't give us what you doing. That's yours. That's your baby. But what
Right.
does it look like in a sense?
So we go to school to learn how to think, right? And Coach Wash, you talked about critical thinking. That's how I see education, is that we are there to be critical thinkers, or learn how to think. And with that, again, we're still operating in a system that is, again, by design, um, designed to kind of maintain this status quo. So when I think of like things like you mentioned math and these equations that we seemingly never will use beyond our time in our trigonometry classes or geometry classes, but in the realm of learning how to think, right? You may not use that equation, but what that's going to do for you is support your linear thinking to just problem solve in any capacity, right? So yeah, you won't use those equations, but you'll know how to problem solve. It's kind of how I see that. The change for education has the major changes in education that have to happen, right, to make the pre-K through 12 process more equitable and responsive to a growing diverse population of students, right, is number one, educators have to be put in a place to be reflective. And Coach Wash, you talk about this covert kind of underground delivery of content beyond what's in the textbook and what's in the curriculum, right? But what I'm saying is that the leadership, starting with the superintendent, has to have this understanding that the system is flawed. We are losing Black and brown students and white students as well in this system because of its design. So number one, we have to be in a space to reflect on our beliefs, reflect on our behaviors, our ways of being, reflect on our practices, right? And the outcomes that we are producing, because educators will tell you that, oh, we're great, we're doing this, we're excellent, but we have these gaps, right? We have these disparities that exist within our system. So how can we be excellent and amazing when we're not able to teach every one of our learners, right? And I'm speaking in a global sense, not necessarily to my school district, but just number one, being able to reflect on yourself, being able to reflect on your practice. Now, once you're able to reflect on your practice, then what are the practices that will need to change, right? Because again, we still have this pre-K through 12 system that has been around for decades, but to your points, students are different these days. Growing up, we didn't have the internet until we got to high school or something like that, right? These kids are born with the internet. So their thinking, their minds are different. So what do we need to adjust in our practices as educators to be responsive to the needs of today's students? And lastly, like the system, how is the system then servicing students, right? So at a universal level, like what is every student who's walking into a classroom in the district can have access to have success, right? And at the targeted level where LeVar is not doing so well in his math class, okay, beyond that universal instruction in his math class, what supports is he getting outside of that math class at a tier 2 level? And then if it's still not working for LeVar, what's at that tertiary or that third level that we can really support LeVar in? And again, that it should be that most of your students can gain or have access to the curriculum and can have success within it. And as you go down those tiers, it should be smaller and smaller and smaller groups, right? But even in that work, there's so much that needs to change with curriculum, so much that needs to change with instruction, so much that needs to change with how we discipline and how we look at discipline, right? Because these are the things that kind of hold the educational system together and determine who is going to have success and who is not. So you don't have to be covert at the classroom level, right? We're trying to give students something that the system is not giving them. The whole idea is to intentionally redesign the system or create a system where everyone can thrive and be responsive. And our state is stepping in as well. So there are these culturally responsive teaching and leading standards that the Illinois State Board of Education released in March of 2001 that are now going into schools of higher education. So teachers who are coming into the profession now have this culturally responsive lens. And the research on culturally responsive teaching has been shown to narrow gaps in academic achievement, because what we're doing in terms of being culturally responsive is we're activating the prior knowledge of students, right? So if a student, but before students come into the pre-K through 12 process or the system, there's learning that happens for them already, right? So their earliest teachers are their parents, right? Their family members, the community, right? So there's this orientation to learning already. But then when they come into this system, that orientation to learning and teaching has been built through this Eurocentric cultural lens. So now you have students who don't have that cultural lens coming into the system, having to learn in those ways. Not saying that, students of color can't learn in this system, but now you have a kindergartner who has this orientation to learning that's connected to their own cultural identity, connected to their language, right? Connected to their families, having to now shift that mode of learning and that orientation to learning to now this Eurocentric way of learning. I've always said, like, the challenge with the gap is we're trying to teach students of color with this Eurocentric lens. So until we can understand that our systems need to change, curriculum, textbooks, teachers need to be able to connect with and see themselves in students that are outside of their own culture. Like, until those things happen, we're going to continue to run into kind of these traps of achievement gaps and discipline disparities, and students not having access to advanced programming like AP honors, gifted and talented programs, and all of that. Like, until we can really get our hands around those three things, it won't shift.
So it sounded like as educators and throughout the curriculum, because I'm in education as well, it sounds like we tried to put a Band-Aid on it by starting that buzzword of relatability.
Yeah.
We're going to try to make the content relatable, but we
Mhm.
miss the whole giant, elephant in the room of making it personal, having that interpersonal relationship, like you said.
Yeah.
My observation through the current education setting on an everyday basis, the way everything is set up, it's not really, there's no real time to have that interpersonal and build that interpersonal thing to make it to where that kid can actually just love on them, or look, just that feel of that love, because we got to learn conjunctions, we got to learn this, we got to learn this, we got to know this by this next test.
But we flip-flop, Luna. We flip-flop from yesterday to today. So think back to when you was in school, back to these lazy ass parents. So we should not have to be spending that time to nurture as much. We shouldn't have to be there in the classroom, because that should have happened at home, as LeVar said, that prior knowledge. So if I'm your teacher for whatever subject it is, I'm going to just boil it down to this. I shouldn't have to be reaching for respect and control in the classroom. Even if you only gave me 60 minutes with the kid, really 60 minutes should be enough for a lesson, to be honest with you. For any K through 12, it should be enough for a lesson, especially if you got them in the school 6 to 7 hours, 5 days a week, for 3/4 of the year. It should be enough for a lesson. Now, the nurturing, yeah, some people, it should be a handful a few that you have to deal with, pull to the side, but now that's the majority of the classroom today. And I'm gonna take it back to the parents. You should not be sending your kid to school to get the things that they should have got at home. Now it makes it harder for the educator to actually educate. Now I have to take time and deal with behavior issues. And we can't focus on the content at this point because there's so many distractions across the classroom.
But you're
So
talking about a different parent, though, bro. You're talking about a totally different type of parent
yeah,
now.
they're
Like,
different today. Like I said, I mean, and it comes back to everything is full circle what we talk about. We talk about the technology, the hot potato ass parent. So when we pass to something else that doesn't allow for parents to have conversations, sit and have that time with their children, sitting in the family room, sitting at the dinner table. I don't care if you was in poverty. The impoverished families actually had more time together back in the day. People claiming broke and still everybody in the household got cell phones today. Where the fuck that come in?
Yeah, I
How's
think I
that
would.
possible? We
Yeah, I think,
hungry, but the line's still active. Everybody still got a distraction in their face, but we don't know how we finna make it to the next day. That's still that's the new ghetto now. Like it's crazy. I mean, and it's still ghetto situation where people don't have it, but today you are seeing even in lower income areas where these distractions are in place. And now the education. I want to talk about this, LeVar. Let's switch gears a little bit from the kids. Let's talk about the educators.
that's
Let's
what
talk
I was hoping
about
you was getting to,
where we're
because I got a
losing.
question about that too.
We are losing teachers. I'm not even in the school no more.
mm-hmm.
You can't even. It's hard to hold on to educate. I literally had a guy in my department in my second to last year in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
He was fresh out of college. He didn't make it through his first semester. Ran up out of there. That man took a leave of absence and never came back. He in a
From the
completely
students,
different field.
from the students, or was it from the
He
system?
didn't have no classroom control. That guy is not in education at all. He got his bachelor's degree to be a teacher. And he made it through half a semester, and he is now doing some type of business analytics job. Now, up out of there. That's just one example that I've seen, but you're seeing a lot of teachers leaving. You're seeing, matter of fact, you can't even keep coaches no more. Coaches would stay in the game forever because a lot of them was in PE. You can't even keep a coach on the field and on the court. How is that possible? How did we get here today?
Yeah. Okay. So then, one thing before I answer that question is I would respectfully disagree with you on the point of you made a point about teachers only being there to deliver the lesson, and
I'm not saying they only there for that, but I'm saying there's a shift in the percentage of time that has to be dedicated to addressing behavior issues and nurture versus how much time that should be dedicated to teaching. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that's what they're only there for, because
right, gotcha.
we all got coaches and teachers that we can refer back to that were very impactful on our lives, that we had close
Correct.
relationships to. And I'm still that dude. I still got prior students and athletes that still got my line today. They could find me, hit me up at any point in time. So I'm not saying that's the only.
How was your relationship with parents?
I had a good relationship with parents. That's just because I wasn't a traditional teacher, so I started off in higher education for a long time as an academic financial advisor. So I knew how to talk to all different types of people and adults. So coming in and dealing with parents, I just knew how to get on their level, see where they were at, and have a conversation with them about, whatever we were dealing with. I never had an issue with parents. I was able to really get through them and form a pretty decent collaborative situation to deal with whatever we were dealing with for a particular student.
What would you say about your colleagues at that time and their relationship with students and relationships with parents?
Well, me and Coach Luna, we were at the same school. So we were in a special situation just due to the hiring at our school actually was the correlation between the type of educators and the background of the educators and the leadership in our school actually connected with our student body quite a bit. I would say for the most part, we had a lot of people at the school that, with my colleagues that a decent amount of them were able to connect with.
Okay. Would you say your approach to student relationship and parent relationship as an educator, would you say that it is anything revolutionary or some kind of wild talent that you have?
No, I wouldn't call it a talent. I'm gonna put it as simple as this, LeVar. I care.
There we go, right? So
there it is.
There it is. So then so at what point in time how do we get to instill the understanding that there's a level of care that needs to be had with our students, that is independent of education, in a formal sense, in terms of just being there for them, but also being able to, because I'm sure you wove that care into how you instructed as well. Yeah.
That's another thing I wanted to speak on. And back to the responsibility of the educator. I'm not going to take the educator off the hook neither. Let's talk about the foundation of how you should be instructing and putting together your lessons for your class. A lot of educators actually are doing, they're only hitting one type of learner. And you go through whatever certification or education you go through, they actually are teaching you. Matter of fact, when I was being observed, because I did a certification in Texas when I became a teacher. When I was being observed, when I first got in the classroom, they wanted to make sure I had to present send my lesson plan over to my observer before they even came to the classroom.
Yeah.
That lesson plan had to hit the auditorial learner, kinesthetic, reading, writing, visual. It had to be able to connect with every type of learner. All right. And and before you get to know those kids, you don't know who's who when you first start that class, but that lesson plan needs to somehow touch everyone. You may have a lecture on that lesson, and then you may have from the lecture, you're gonna have some visuals with the lecture, and then from there you may have an assignment. I even in my master's, I talked about this. I did a heavy study about arts. I know you can connect with this. Those students are missed very much in the education. There's a whole study about, and I don't remember the name of the study. It was on the East Coast. It was an art school, and they implemented the arts into every core class. They made it somehow made it a foundation for every core class, a school of arts. And when they did that, math scores shot up, science scores shot up, things that you would not connect with art just by increasing that. So little things like that allowing for creativity.
Right.
Actually helped my students a lot. I made sure I did that quite a bit.
So then I'm hearing you say that there's a level of care that is needed in addition to being responsive to the students' needs by way of how we engage the students in the learning.
Yeah, a level of care, and then the foundation of how you should put your lessons together in the classroom.
Yeah,
so that responsibility needs to be on the educator for sure.
Okay.
But at the same time, there's going to be some exhaustion from the educator, which is why you're losing a lot of educators, and there's a shortage of teachers.
Yeah.
And when you see a shortage of coaches in Texas football, you have a problem. But just as an example, but there has to be that balance of care and implementing the foundation, but also there has to be engagement from the parents. And I taught at the high school level, so we're a little bit too late. I don't want to say too late. You can save some, but it's kind of hard at that point. And that's just development psychology.
So much set in stone. Some are,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
again, some are willing to listen to you though. Also,
Yeah.
and we've seen
Yeah.
a
And
lot
that's
of
why
those examples,
you
right?
got to keep going. That's why I asked you earlier
Yeah.
about how to stay in the fight. That was part of it too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think we're staying in the fight. So to talk about teacher shortage, I don't think shortage of workers is something that's exclusive to education.
No.
We're not out of the woods yet as it relates to the impact of the pandemic, right? I mean, you go to a restaurant, they're understaffed. People aren't coming to work. You go to a number of places, right? And it's just folks aren't, we don't have as many folks working today as we did prior to the pandemic. The adults are not okay, right? There was so much trauma and disruption that happened in the midst of the pandemic, and the idea of intestinal fortitude and just grit and toughness. It broke some people, coming out of that pandemic. There were some businesses that were there that we never saw again after the pandemic. There were people who were alive and well that aren't here anymore after the pandemic. There were people who had a certain mindset before the pandemic, experienced it, and that mindset has been snapped, right? In terms of people not fully recovering emotionally and psychologically from it. So as I see people, and I'll speak to the shortage of teachers. Teaching has always been hard work, right? Never been an easy thing to be an educator, and an educator is an undervalued and sometimes underserved person in our society. Um, but staying in the fight and having that intestinal fortitude, I'm just saying, is difficult in our post-pandemic world. And yes, we would like to. I think we're beyond it in terms of the medical the medical initiative, and just kind of the medical component of it, right? Of knowing what it is, how do we stay safe around it and move beyond it, vaccinations and all of that. But as far as like the impact emotionally and psychologically, I still think we are dealing with that, and people's fuses are a little bit shorter, and just my personal beliefs and people's level of just intestinal fortitude and willing to stay in the fight and just to show up to work every day across a number of industries is down. I think you can see it more in education because that's been an institution that has just been there and a part of our culture and a part of our lives for as long as we've been alive and before we've been alive. So we can see those hits because everybody can relate to it, right? Who have children who are in school. But this goes back to my idea of like we need to redesign education, because where we are now, with the way students are showing up, with the way parents are showing up, with the way our educators are showing up and experiencing things, this is not sustainable. And we can't operate in the same ways as we did prior to the pandemic as it relates to now. And hopefully we can wake up soon and begin to make some changes. And I have some radical changes in my mind around how we could make education better. I don't think everybody would be
I
too
I
happy
was
with
just
those.
going to ask you, what are some of your ideas? What are some of your thoughts? I definitely want to hear that.
I think number one, we need to go to year-round school. Number one. Yeah, I know, I know. Uh, Year-round school, paying educators more, right? Because I think we have to professionalize the profession. We have to pay educators more. I think school year round. If there's a way to incorporate, 3-day weekends every week and have a shorter, you still have your winter break, your spring break, your Thanksgiving break, summer break obviously would be a little bit shorter. But
They have
going
like an
year,
adult schedule.
what's that?
They're gonna have an adulting schedule.
Yeah,
Essentially.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Life,
just
work don't stop. Life don't
Yeah.
stop. So they get the
it's just,
same.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So, and then you kind of combat the summer slide that happens for students for
Mhm.
being out for 2.5 months or whatever. Then you got to get them back in and reboot and get the brain going again. Now, is that a reality? I don't know. This is just kind of me thinking outside of the box and just kind of just trying to be innovative, right? I know we can't, what we're doing now in education in our country, I don't think it's sustainable, given the status of all the people who are involved, administrators, teachers, parents, students, because we're just in a different space. Like, post pandemic, like our country is different. We are different in many ways, but we're still trying to operate in the same way. And people are struggling with staying in the fight around that.
Man.
So with that, I got another question. With that
Yeah.
proposed
Yeah.
year round,
And that's just one idea.
what about block schedules?
You're asking me how I feel about block schedules, or
Would you include that with that year round? What do you
oh,
think?
I don't know that. I think that's getting into I would never being a classroom teacher. I don't think I'm qualified to really speak on kind of the scheduling and what that means for the classroom teacher as far as time and
I'll put
managing
it
that
like
time.
this. So since you are looking to do year round, that's closer to where we live as adults, right? The days off will be similar, right? So essentially the block schedule will be closer to pretty much I'm giving the children something closer to a college schedule.
At what level though? Would it be
I mean,
high school? Because I don't think
I mean, let's say high school. Let's say maybe even start in middle school. But
maybe.
Look at it that way, where it's like this subject or this class, I'm here 2 days a week.
Uh-huh.
You got no more than 2 or 3 days a week in a particular subject.
Yeah, maybe. Like I said, my overarching ideal is to let's go year round. Let's relieve some of the pressure, right, of having these 5-day school weeks. Alleviate some of the pressure and give teachers some time back, more time to just kind of take care of themselves, right? The self-care piece, because we get in the rhythm of a school year, and we know there's the excitement of coming back in August and everything is good and everybody's flying high back to school. The sales are popping and all of that. And then we get into October, right? And we are feeling it. We got, Halloween. And then by the time we get to Thanksgiving, like we're ready for a break, right? We come back and now we're counting down to winter break. And by the time you get to winter break, people are just drained. You know what I'm saying? And then we got to come back in January and fight through the cold of January, February.
The spring break.
We're trying to get the spring. We're trying to
Right.
get the spring break. And then by the time May comes around, you got graduation and finals and all of those things. And people are just, a mess. So I think we have to kind of hit the release, the pressure release valve a little bit at some point in time. Because that rhythm of a school year, it's been tried and true. For decades, right? But again, given where people are at, we might want to try something a little bit different just to support because again, you're right. People are leaving the profession for burnout or whatever the case may be. Like we have to do something differently, because if we don't, then we'll have more and more people leaving. Now we have AI, right? That is more and more prominent these days. We've already seen remote learning by way of the pandemic. Like things can get a little crazy if we don't be intentional with how we take care of each other within this system. But this is just me just kind of, thinking out loud and putting together a wish list. And I wonder if this would work. I don't have any evidence to show that it would, but it would be a great conversation to have. And especially that point about paying teachers more. Like the money is
Man.
let's pay teachers more, right? Now,
Let's
of
pay
course,
teachers like we should be paying teachers like sports figures should be getting paid.
well,
Again, I'm not saying millions of dollars, but
right. Well, we can, not even
teachers.
sports figures, but attorneys and
Yeah, absolutely.
engineers.
No, you said it right, Steve. Go ahead, give me Messi's contract.
You want that meal?
Give me that what's that
Yeah,
buddy
yeah,
that
yeah.
signed with the Angels? Otani?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you want
Yeah,
his
give me
money?
that.
You want his
Yeah.
money?
Yeah, I need that.
But that accountability is going to go up too now, right? I
Absolutely.
mean,
That's
heavy is
right.
the
Absolutely.
head
To
that
whom
wears the
much is given,
crown.
much is
So
tested.
yeah, those expectations now
First
go.
round draft pick, Coach Luna. You
Yeah.
know, you get 3 years in this game. Hey, Luna's renewing his contract, a franchise teacher.
Absolutely,
He's
man.
graduated XYZ. All his students have 4.0. You're
Yeah.
gonna have
That's
some
some good
stats with that.
credentials, man. That's some real good
There we
Have some
go.
credentials.
stats rolling with that.
No, I totally agree, especially about paying the teachers more because they are undervalued. And I think that also, again, that has a that plays a big factor on people their wantingness and or willingness to get into the role. Because again, you understand which one of the things you just said, coach, was that you there's an expectation, right, with that money, right? You need to
Absolutely.
perform at a certain level. So the expectation there that may not be there, and something that you experience, I've experienced. I know Coach Luna, you experienced. I know Coach Watts experienced is the lack of care from those particular individuals because they may have been burnt out. They may have been at those points where they're like, you know what, I can't pour into another kid today. I don't have the wherewithal. I don't have it in me anymore to pour into this person anymore. So my question for you, I always try to stomp out those issues that we particularly will find with an employee in training. What are some of the things that you see that are being done in the educational system to start training teachers to fend for themselves in these type of situations and actually stay in the fight in those type of situations?
Yeah, I think so there is relatively new to the education field is the idea of social emotional learning, being in tune with just emotional well-being, psychological care, the idea of self-care for our professionals in the system. There are professional development opportunities where we can have those conversations about about self-care and being intentional with taking care of ourselves. It's as simple as, on the plane, they say you got to put your mask on first before you help somebody else. So that sentiment and that energy is out there. I don't know if there's been a real, and I'm just speaking from my own experience as an educator of 13 years. If there's been any real like tangible professional development around it, right? We speak to it SEL in the realm of students, but we don't focus on it nearly enough for our educators. It'll be mentioned, but that I haven't seen any real concerted or systems level efforts in making sure that we take care of teachers. And that's something that it just needs to be done. And now if I'm thinking about even my own work, I haven't built that into my own practice in leadership in terms of making sure people are taking care of themselves. But then to Coach Wash's point, there's the demand of the schedule, right?
Right.
And when do we fit that in the ebb and flow of a school year? So I'm interested to ask you, Steve, how do you mentioned that you approach or you have that type of work that's happening with folks that are being trained in your companies?
So one of the things that I try to do is again I told you I work in commercial refrigeration, so it's a little bit, and I work with all dispatchers. So when working with dispatchers, you have a dispatcher that may come from a logistics background, or one that may come from an HVAC background, but doesn't really know the commercial refrigeration side of everything as much.
Yeah.
So we try to help those particular individuals not so much with the day to day. I understand you know how to dispatch, you know how to move people from point A to point B as effectively and efficiently as possible.
Mm-hmm.
But what are some of those other intangibles that we need to start making sure that you're prepared for? That
Gotcha.
technician that you're about to have a conversation with that has been working for 16 hours and wants to quit. right now.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
he's done right now, right? That one guy that just been having the worst week ever, right? Personally, he's been having the worst week. You can tell how he's been running
Mhm.
the calls. Like, how are you having these kind of conversations with those individuals? Because the dispatchers are probably the most in touch with the technicians outside of a service manager, right?
Right.
So how are we preparing you to have these conversations with those individuals so that they can feel supported while they're out there in the field, because they're out there in the elements, they're out there they're out there in dangerous environments and
Yeah.
situations. So how do we have those conversations with those individuals, and how do we prepare you to have those conversations, and or are you
Right.
prepared to have those conversations, because you may not
Yeah.
be the person to have that convo.
Yeah. And now that I hear you say that, I'll take a step back and think about our human resources department
Mm,
and how there is a mentoring program. Um, and uh, but typically these mentoring programs are built to support the new educator, or new educator to a educator that's new to a district that may have been a veteran educator, or a new principal or administrator, right, who can be connected with an administrator or someone who is their peer at those different levels, to support in that type of way. But it's rarely extended to kind of the veteran folks in the spaces, right? So now my wheels are turning as to how can we um, support the folks who've been there, right, who know the
mm,
ropes, but still may be experiencing or feeling, that pressure, or feeling, that they can't necessarily stay in the fight,
right.
and need that support. So we do have like affinity groups in our district that have been, in my opinion, pretty uh, instrumental in making our teachers and educators of color feel a sense of belonging, right?
Hmm.
And knowing they have people that they can reach out to and connect with. But we need to be able to do that globally in some kind of way.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Coach LeVar, this has been an awesome podcast. We've been blessed today to have this conversation with you today.
Oh man, thank y'all for having me on. It's been a blessing. I love what you brothers are doing with the podcast itself, getting people on to have some conversations just about life and how to make it through and do your best work, man. So I appreciate the platform, the opportunity to come out and connect. I would consider myself a friend of the show now,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
look forward to just continue. I'm going to be tuning in and watching. I jumped on YouTube last week and checked out a few episodes and watched y'all work. And again, impressive. And I'm excited for what y'all doing. And I'm just happy to be a part of it, man.
Man, we cannot wait to have you back on another pod. So you will definitely be getting a call from us for another Coach's Corner, probably another a couple episodes.
Man,
Uh,
anytime.
Yeah,
definitely,
because this thing could go
definitely.
6 hours if we really
It
wanted
could
to.
go 6 hours. I mean, two hours went by like that. I mean, the two
Yeah.
hours flew.
I mean,
Yeah,
this
It
this
flew.
topic and this arena, yeah, this
It's
is one
multifaceted. It
conversation.
this is
needs that
special. Yes,
attention.
this is a special arena for a lot of us for a lot of reasons. One, Coach Wash, Coach Luna, and even myself, we've all been in an educational background. I've been in admissions. I've been in admissions for quite some time. I've been in career services for quite some time. I've been
Yeah.
a director of education, director of career services. I understand a lot of these facets, and it's
Yeah.
interesting to me to see it from your perspective, being able to influence not only the teachers, but you're also able to influence both the student and the parent.
Yeah,
So
working at it, man. Just working at it. And it's not just me. Like it's a lot of people in I'll say to the Valley View School District, man. Like our leadership team, and starting with our superintendent, she means everything she says about this work and is really, clear the way for me to do the work in an authentic way, because I've been in other spaces where I haven't been given the latitude of the coverage and
yep.
support. to do the work in this type of way. So I'm extremely fortunate in that way. And I realize that, I know other equity directors and other districts as well who, we all have our challenges, but when the leadership doesn't support the work, it just makes it that much more difficult. So I'm glad I was
100%.
able to, I'm glad I was able to kind of bring something to the podcast today, man. And I'm again excited for the work that y'all doing. Happy to be a part of it.
Man, you brought more than what we asked for, sir. Way
All
more.
right.
So,
In a
Well, I
good way, for
appreciate y'all.
absolutely,
I
in a
appreciate
great
y'all.
way. In a great way.
Yeah, fantastic.
Again, if you like what you heard from the Coach Life podcast radio family, please go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. Again, stay positive, my friends.